This is the VIP Podcast, Virginia in Politics. Let's listen to host Chris Saxman explore the personalities and policies that connect the Commonwealth. The VIP Podcast is brought to you by the VCTA, Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free. The views and opinions expressed here do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the VCTA and Virginia Free or our sponsors.
Hi, this is Chris Saxman with Virginia Free. I'm the executive director, former member of the House of Delegates who served with the gentleman who will be talking about his books here in a minute. But I want to talk to you about VCTA, the Broadband Association of Virginia, who brings you this podcast, the VIP podcast, available to you on Spotify, Apple, and of course, YouTube. Please subscribe, like, and share. Joining us today, David Toscano, former delegate, member of the House of Delegates from Charlottesville, who is a published author twice over. David, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Chris. And, thanks for having me on. And I wanted to compliment you on your Substack and publications. I really enjoy those. I especially enjoy the embedded videos, the Wayback Machine. And, I'm just waiting for you to put the Woodstock video in there so I can look to see if I was there or to see where I was.
Did you go to Woodstock?
Oh, yeah. My hair was shorter. My hair was shorter than it is now, but I was there, so I can tell stories.
Wow. This is, you don't think of short-haired guys in the late 60s going to Woodstock.
No, I was just a high school kid from upstate New York who wanted to go to a rock festival. Who knew?
And that became an iconic part of America's history and the counterculture. And the counterculture.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, okay, before we jump into your books then, because you went there, let's go there. What was it like to be in high school in Woodstock?
It was wet. I mean, the dominant opinion that I had of the whole experience was that it was wet. And a friend of mine and I, we hitchhiked down. Those were the days, right? We hitchhiked down from Syracuse, New York. And we got there very early. In fact, we were there before the fences went down. And we were part of the crew that went in when the fences went down. Remember Arlo Guthrie's? This is a free concert, man. Yeah, it was a free concert. And we got to the fifth row.
Okay. And
then we had when it was so wet and I had no tent or anything, we stayed one day and we decided to walk out of there. It was a 10-mile walk because of all the cars and the traffic and you couldn't go anywhere.
Wow. 10-mile walk out.
Yeah.
Wet, soaking wet.
Yeah, I mean, just telling people I was there is much more significant than how I felt about it.
It's like when I tell people I went to the 1971 All-Star game, which is one of the greatest All-Star games in history because it had like 25 Hall of Famers on the field at one time in Detroit. And they're like, wow, what was it like? I said, I don't know. I was 5. How would I remember anything about that day whatsoever? But so did you see any acts? Did you go like?
Oh yeah. Sly and the Family Stone, Richie Havens. I was there in the beginning. So Richie Havens, Jefferson Airplane, Crosby, Stills and Nash. And the ones I didn't see, I've just made up that I saw because you watch the movie enough and you kind of think, oh yeah, you were there for that.
So, but do you remember a song played by one of those artists? Like, man, that guy or that team was on fire that day.
Yeah. Richie Havens' Freedom. It starts the movie out, and it's a very moving song about, what people were going through at the time. And so I remember that very, very distinctly. And of course, The Who, won't get fooled again.
So the lyrics back then really resonated with you. The Who, did you see The Who there? Were they there that day, the first day?
I'm not even sure if they were there first day, but I'm such a Who fan that I've watched the clip in the movie enough to think that I was watching them. And, the lines about the same as the old boss. I mean, it's so typical of the time,
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. When I like going back and breaking down, because growing up then, I was more of an R&B Motown guy. I lived in Detroit, at the outside of Detroit at the time, and I was, Jackson 5, Isaac Hayes, those, Earth, Wind and Fire. Those were my jams. But when I go back, and I was not the Stones guy or the Who guy. Zeppelin. I just wasn't into them. But when I go back now, and I go to more Stones concerts than any concert I've ever been to, I go back and I read the lyrics, and I'm just blown away by the poetry by some artists back then, Dylan especially. Is there a line politically that has stuck with you throughout the years?
Well, two lines.
Lyrics.
The Who, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Right.
And the other one, of course, you can't always get what you want, which is the Stones line. And that's politics right there.
Right there.
It's in the book. In fact, I think I might have an epigram of one of the chapters that has that line in it. But yeah, I mean, between Woodstock and baseball, man, we could spend the whole time not talking about politics.
Well, I mean, it's all going to come back to that eventually, as most things do these days, especially with folks like you and I who have this passion for politics. But the you can't always get what you want is one of the lyrics that I constantly go back to. If I'm teaching a class or giving a talk, that's what I go to. And because the lyric continues, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need.
Exactly.
And that is the whole rub in politics. It's the art of the possible. People go, I always love it. I don't love it, but I always laugh about it when someone says, I'm a non-compromising progressive or conservative, whatever. Oh, so you don't get anything done. Just to say, you can't be non-compromising and suggest to the world you're going to get things done, because the only thing you do in politics, in legislating, is compromise.
That's right.
You take someone else's opinion and make it part of the legislation to get done what you ultimately are trying to get done. And you move the needle a little bit in your direction. You declare victory and you go home. People don't want that. They want all or nothing, it seems these days, in this binary construct.
Exactly. And of course, the only alternative to that is you have a supermajority. You do things and then you get pushback, and then you have to change it again. And that's what we're sort of getting a little bit of now, where the pendulum goes back and forth. And sort of the worry is that it swings too far back and forth.
Right.
And then you move towards authoritarianism, which is, I think, something we got to be really worried about.
Yeah.
On both sides.
But both sides. I mean, no question. And not just the United States, it's global, isn't it? But let's dive into that as we talk about your books. And I'm really intrigued. Why did you decide to write two books? What was the aha or the genesis? David, you should do this.
Well, I spent 14 years at General Assembly, and every year I kept a notebook of things that were happening. I spent 12 years in city government, and when I started my transition into retirement, I thought, well, I've got some things I'd like to say here. And so I started writing, and it was all going to be about my life in public service and all about the policies, not just just a personal vignette, but all about the policies. As I turned in a manuscript to the publisher, it was 1,100 pages long, and I could have kept going. And they said, you're not going to publish a book at 1,100 pages. So
David, I love you. I would never pick that book up off the shelf.
That's right.
Too damn big.
That's right. So I said, well, okay, let's break it into two. And so it became two books. One, which is Fighting Political Gridlock, How the States Shape Our Lives and the Nation, which is all about what states do and how people neglect them at their peril. And we're seeing a lot of that right now. But it takes you through everything from how states control how people vote, where the lines are drawn for districts, the rules for voting, and in that way have an influence on Congress through education policy, criminal justice, even energy policy. And so that's the states-oriented book. And the second book became more Virginia-centric, and it has more to do with how Virginia changed during the 14 years I was there, from a state that was pretty reliably a Republican state, moving dramatically into the blue column, and now we're not quite sure that and that's one of the reasons why I got the title Bellwether, because Virginia is kind of a bellwether for where the country is going. And so that became the second book. And one got published in September of 21, and one got published just in the last several months. Bellwether.
That's great, because I was at the Barnes and Noble several months ago. It's like 4 or 5 months ago, and was looking on the shelves and I see David Toscano. I'm like, my David Toscano? Did he write a book? Nope. Okay, well, go David. Let's talk about Bellwether and Virginia, since we're a Virginia specific podcast, Virginia Free, for which I work. Nonpartisan, nonprofit, pro-business group, tries to keep the ball moving down the field for free enterprise and good government. There has been a lot of changeover in Virginia the last 20 years, and it's the suburban-dominated Virginia has moved and trended more blue. And do you think it's a function of Democrats winning voters or Republicans losing them?
It's a combination, and you throw in the mix the diversification of Virginia, especially in the suburban areas and in the what we call the urban crescent that runs down from Fairfax down I-95 through Richmond across to Hampton Roads. I mean, demographics is not destiny, but we do know a few things about the demographics in Virginia. We know, for example, that in 2000, 70% of Virginians were identified as white. By the year 2020, 59% were identified as white. You had a much larger Hispanic population, a much larger Asian population, which people don't think about. And you had over 50% of the people in Virginia who were not born in the state, including 12% who actually are foreign born. So that is a huge demographic shift. You take Prince William, for example, because that's where Democrats made a lot of gains in the last 6 years. And in Prince William, 65% of the people identified as white in 2000, 38% identify as white in 2020. So you see the big demographic shift.
Huge shift. And I was at a conference and someone was talking about the demographic shift in Virginia and how more Hispanics were moving in. I said yes, but also Virginians are also moving out, and most of the migration isn't necessarily from Latin American or Hispanic countries. It's also from Massachusetts and Maryland and New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania. People moving down for jobs and education, and getting a job after college, raising their kids here, and their kids going to colleges here. I'll never ever forget. We had a group of parents over for my son's volleyball team because we kept seeing them in the stands and going, I think they're our team. After a while, you kind of recognize the same faces. Whereas back home in Stanton, you knew everyone. You knew who they went to prom with, where they went to church, where they eat on Sundays after church. You knew everybody. Here, we just see the same face. We said, we should invite them over to our house. And we did, and they all came over. It was very nice. All couples, all married, which is an interesting demographic. College educated, successful, but they didn't know each other. And I said, Michelle, go get some name tags. And as soon as you put name tags on, their faces lit up. They could talk. They had a few pops. They were really embracing one another. But on the background, not embracing themselves that way. They were having a good time. Not that way. But I had put on the background the Virginia Tech Miami football game. And if you're from Virginia and you know Virginia Tech football, Miami is a big rivalry, right? It might have been either a Thursday or a Saturday night. I can't remember which one. Anyway, and I had a big screen TV up there. No one was watching the game, and it was a close game with a big comeback. Wow. No one was watching the game, and it dawned on me. I'm saying, hey, can I get y'all's attention? Because all the boys were out back, fire pitting, that kind of stuff in the backyard. We were in the kitchen. Open up the kitchen, goes into the living room where the TV was. No one migrated over to watch the game. I said, where are y'all from? And they looked at me. I'm like, no. Where are you from? I know you live here, but where did you come from? Because no one's paying attention to that football game, which means none of you are from Virginia. This is like 24 people, and no one was born in Virginia. Not one of them.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I look back farther. 1960, it was less than 30% of the people in Virginia came from out of state, and now it's over 50% were born out of state, including, I think, 5 of the last 6 governors were born out of state. Over 50% of the legislature was born out of state. I mean, you talk about old time Virginia. Yeah, there you go.
Me, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, old time Virginia.
I've been here since '75, though.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore.
No,
So
but,
it's a really
to your
different
point,
state.
though, because all the turnover, the transitions, the demographic diversity is exploding, especially in the Asian population. There's just I live in Short Pump now. The ethnic diversity is just absolutely fantastic, and it's just so enlivening to see different cultures and people getting along and understanding all that. But politically, it's very different. And as such, to your point about Virginia being a bellwether, because they don't look at things as, oh, I'm a Virginian, this is what Virginians do. You have to constantly go back and say, this is why we do things in Virginia and why it works so well. First off, I think it's really important to understand. People go, why don't we have a succeeding governor? Why can't they succeed themselves? And you probably have a different opinion than I do on that. But we also do certain things differently, or in the culture of Virginia that erodes over time, because people go, that doesn't make any sense, and eventually it'll change. But the change that's coming to Virginia has been stunning, but also a reflection of the suburbanization and the shifting populations throughout the country. And that's why I think it's a bellwether.
And Virginia is a much more nationalized political state now than it used to be. People used to orient more to Richmond. Now they orient more to DC. And so when you ask the question, did Democrats gain votes or Republicans lose votes, or Democrats gain votes? I mean, it's a mix, because during the decade of the 2010s, especially after 2016, Trump was there in the White House, and he was generating a lot of Democratic vote in Virginia. I mean, really large vote. And when then he left and Biden came in, you had some of the reverse, and especially in the rural areas. And that's what helped the turnout for Youngkin and helped him win the election. There are other reasons why, I think, including some things maybe people haven't thought about. But now we're going to see what happens next.
Absolutely. The point you make there about Trump's impact on the Virginia electorate. I mean, when you run on draining the swamp, and people who work in what he was alluding to as the swamp of Washington, D.C., live in Northern Virginia, they're going to come out and vote against you, regardless of party. And a lot of people who voted Democrat probably go in that direction, because that's just where the Virginia Democrats have very smartly aligned themselves with the Northern Virginia, I would say, moderate Democrat, Clintonian Democrat. And Republicans, frankly, haven't been going after their issues in a way that attracts their vote. And we've seen the erosion over time, especially in Prince William County as a prime example, but also in Fairfax. I mean, we used to have, when I was there, when you were there, we had several Republicans in Fairfax, and now it's 65-35 in some of those districts. It's zero. But it's extraordinary, the changeover that has occurred there. But the intensification on the other side, the fighting ninth used to be worth fighting over. It's not even in play anymore for Democrats. So they're going to intensify their turnout in the urban and inner suburban voting precincts, and that has changed, and is also a reflection nationally. And I think, as I was talking to a candidate now, House Delegates Democratic candidate in the suburbs just now before we got on the phone here, that changing demographic is really important to understand and tap into for Democrats. But the brand the Democrats built over the last 20 years has been moderate Democrat, focused on education and roads, not going crazy and too far left too quickly, and turning off voters. They've been delivering on the goods and basically being nice. Nice goes a long way in this business. Is that an accurate portrayal?
Yeah, I think it definitely is an accurate portrayal. I mean, there are a lot of things that go into why people win or lose elections. And I think the Republican Party over the last couple of decades has taken the cultural wars too far. And I think people have reacted to that, as particularly women who have reacted to some of the proposals about abortion and schools and guns. But it does swing back, and there's always the risk that Democrats will get out in front of their skis and start talking about things that don't resonate. For example, this issue about crime and whether Democrats have gone too far in terms of criminal justice reform. issues about parental involvement in schools. I think that played a big role in Youngkin's win, and I think the Democrats need to make sure that people understand that that's not the way most Democrats think about having folks involved in their school divisions. So it's really important for people to understand that the Virginia voter doesn't go too far out of the mainstream central political viewpoint, and if one side goes too far out there, they're not going to get the support.
Well, and that's what we've seen. With the Virginia bellwether is so tied to who's in the White House. We've seen, but for Terry McAuliffe's victory in 2013 over Ken Cuccinelli and Robert Sarvis, had that been ranked choice voting, it might have been a different outcome. It had gone back to like the late 70s since there was someone in the off White House and the executive mansion at the same time, because the electorate in Virginia reacts to the first term of the president in the White House, and they tend to vote against it.
Yeah, and they call it the Virginia curse, and McAuliffe was the one that broke the curse. And of course, this time around, he didn't have the same degree of luck. Now, there are lots of different reasons why that campaign went south for him. What you mentioned, ranked choice voting. Here's a little theory for you that a lot of people don't discuss. There are a lot of reasons why Youngkin won the election, but one of my arguments is that one reason had to do with how he was selected to be the candidate, which was essentially through a ranked choice voting process that a lot of people thought was going to be very chaotic at the time. But what it did was eliminated what people perceived to be the most conservative candidate, who might have won it in a plurality contest and become the nominee. And I think McAuliffe would have dispatched her pretty quickly. But Youngkin sort of rose up as the kind of majority consensus figure within the Republican Party as a result of the ranked choice. And I think that made the difference in the election.
I think it was a huge difference in the election because the brand that Youngkin has, and I agree with you on all those counts, the brand he came out of that nominating method, the unassembled convention, was a relatively nice guy, business leader, who didn't have a lot of attacks thrown at him by the other conservative, who might be the other people who might be perceived as being more conservative, Amanda Chase, by the electorate, and Pete Snyder, who were trying to position to the right, but they didn't attack him because they didn't want to lose his voters. And there's still a large part of the Virginia electorate and Republican Party who, are of that bent. And that, to your point, that's one of the reasons why Trump did so well in the nominations in 2016 is he got to 28-30% and got the plurality and rolled up the states. Here in Virginia, the ranked choice application, and I had some of the campaign consultants and workers tell me how frustrated they were that they couldn't attack Glenn Youngkin because of ranked choice voting. They didn't want to alienate the voters. I'm like, well, why is that a bad thing? Well, because we want to win. Okay, but your team ultimately wants to win in November too. And that's just the internal dynamic that both parties have. I also think the Republicans got a month head start on Terry McAuliffe and the Democrats, who still had a massive primary of their own to fight over. And I think it showed some of the weakness in the Democratic Party when you had, younger Black candidates running against Terry McAuliffe, for all intents and purposes, leader of the Democratic Party in the state, having been a former governor, raised a lot of money. But because they got an early start and had ranked choice voting, they were set up to drive up Glenn Youngkin's favorables early in the summer.
Oh, yeah. And they had an incredibly sophisticated targeting operation that drilled down pretty elaborately into all these precincts. It was very effective.
Oh, very effective, very effective. So tell us about your book, Bellwether.
Sure. Well, it starts in 2000.
I mean, we talked about Bellwether, about Virginia. Okay, but what's the point you're trying to drive home?
The point I'm trying to make is it's the dramatic changes in the state that weren't predetermined, i.e. the demographics itself don't make it. There are things that have happened along the way that changed it from red to blue. So take a look at, say, the redistricting process. when you and I came in, you came in 2002 or four?
Two.
So when you came in 2002, you were just completed the redistricting, in which the Republicans pretty much stacked a deck against Democrats. But the big one was in 2011 when the Republicans had control. And you had in 2008, when Obama won the electors out of Virginia, that was the first time in 50 years that a Democrat had won. Kane had won for governor, and then you had the redistricting. And a 50-50 state, I guess conceivably, became in the House of Delegates, 66 Republicans and 34 Democrats, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so you had a massive majority in the House of Delegates, even though you had a pretty equal split in the the votes across the state. You also had a pretty large split in the congressional delegation. I think at one point it was 8-3 Republicans. And over time, with the court cases, it turned the redistricting process upside down, because the first court case overturned the congressional map, and the Democrats then went to 7-4 in the congressional delegation. And then the second court case overturned the Republican redistricting of the House, which eventually led to the majority for the Democrats in 2019. So to explain how those things went on, I tried to explain them in the book, how these lawsuits were filed and what the theories were and how it played with the Supreme Court. And that played a role in what happened in 2019. And they say the rest is history.
Well, the rest is history, but now we have these brand new districts, 2023. The slate is completely clean. We don't have these gerrymandered districts ad nauseum. You have, I think, very fair districts that many more will be competitive. You have a lot of incumbents currently jammed into districts together where they have to figure it out. Republicans have worked out their differences, I think, in all but two, where incumbents are slotted against each other. Democrats are going to have, I think, probably the more nasty primary fights among incumbents anyway. I think that's set up for that reality. In the Senate, we're going to have a lot of new senators. This election in 2023, in my estimation, will be the most important General Assembly elections for the last 50 years and for the next 50 years, because of the sea change that's going to occur in the turnover, and that because so many new faces are going to take place, that amount of turnover is going to be extraordinary, but it's also going to be relatively permanent.
Well, yeah, I mean, you make really good points here, and you've been doing it on your newsletter, which I encourage people to read. What's fascinating is how the Democrats can't seem to resolve their differences. So you have Kathy Tran running against Eileen Fillicorn. You've got three people running against each other in Richmond. The Republicans, maybe part of it has to do with the way the maps are drawn, but the Republicans seem to figure it out. They're moving people around on the chessboard. And so they're not going to have these contested primaries. Now, Chris, you walk into the House of Delegates now, and you don't recognize many people there, right? And same with me. Only like about one half of the House now has 4 years of experience or less.
I know.
And I think there's like 30% of the people there now I never served with, and I've only been out 2 years. So, so you'd think of the sea change that's occurring, and you sort of worry about, again, whether people are going to sort of break apart the tradition we have in Virginia and trying to work things out and get along. I mean, I think the big issues have to do with economic development too, and business, because traditionally there's been kind of a consensus about the importance of a good business climate. But I think there are a number of people who don't necessarily view that the same way as people did a decade ago. One of my chapters in Bellwether has to do with economic development and how the Amazon deal was won, and a lot of the nuances there. And Terry McAuliffe was just about as strong a business proponent as you get. I mean, talk about a cheerleader.
Absolutely. I mean, I said that at Virginia Free's event in September of last year, introducing him. I said, with the Youngkin folks there, this is one of the most pro-business governors Virginia's ever had. And, some of the Youngkin campaign folks weren't really thrilled with what I said. I said, but it's the truth. And the members of Virginia Free are the ones who told me that. And I reflect my members. And a lot of, of the members of Virginia Free say, look, and we'll have dinner, whatever. Say, look, Terry McAuliffe was really good for us. He worked, he tried to develop the economy in Virginia and our industry in particular. And I just did it to tell the Youngkin folks, this is not a lock. You're just not going to get the business community because you showed up. Terry McAuliffe has deep relationships with a lot of these people.
That's right. And it's sort of interesting to see how the scandal, so-called scandal involving the ad that's just been released with Youngkin in it that promotes that welcomes people to Virginia, how that's turning into a partisan fight. And already everybody's snarking at each other. The word corruption has been used, not the greatest word to be used.
No, you don't
I don't know that there's examples of corruption here. I mean, I think there are legitimate questions to be answered, to be sure.
Sure.
And then the Republican counterpoint is some other snarky comment that really doesn't relate to anything. So it's about time to put the snark behind us and try to figure out what the best way is to promote Virginia. And hopefully cooler heads will prevail in this dispute, and we'll sort of get back on track.
Put the snark behind us. I think we have a bumper sticker coming here. Stop the snark.
Yeah, either that or, maybe you and I should have a joint podcast called Snark Patrol, in which we find the worst stuff that's being generated out of both parties and put it up online to say, are you kidding me?
We'll call it Bravo Sierra.
Sure enough. But I also have, and the book also has a number of things about personalities. I mean, Terry McAuliffe was one of the most interesting he still is one of the most interesting personalities around. And I don't know if you knew this, but Terry McAuliffe grew up 1 mile from me in Syracuse, New York. He went to Bishop Ludden High School, Catholic school. I went to the public school.
Well, did you know each other?
Well, that's the joke. The joke is that I measured him for his high school prom tuxedo because he got all his tuxedos at my father's former war rental place, Toscano's. And so we've now come up with a whole sort of series of jokes about how I sized him up a long time ago and, that sort of thing. It's kind of.
No, wait a second. Do you actually remember sizing him?
Or
was it like, I probably sized you?
On the political trail, I always remember that I did.
This is a Woodstock moment part 2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember Terry. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And Bob McDonnell, Bob McDonnell spent a lot of time with me talking about his experiences. And, he and I did not agree on a number of things. He was a very strong proponent of economic growth and development in the Commonwealth, right. Bob's for jobs, that sort of thing.
Bob's for jobs.
And, right. Of course, I'm a close friend of Cree Deeds, so I was not enthused that he got elected. But, it was important to tell part of his story. And I tried to tell it in the book and how so many people came out to support him in his appeal before the Supreme Court. And so there are a lot of things about him. There's stories about Bill Howell and how he would buck his caucus to take a position on a really important issue related to redistricting.
That was huge. That was
huge.
I think one of the defining moments in Bill Howell's legacy. The ability to say at that moment, this is great for my party, but bad for the Commonwealth, and it's non-germane. I mean, the fact of the matter was the ruling we're talking about was for a bill that's coming over from the Senate, amendment to a House bill, and the Speaker said the amendment is not germane, and would have redrawn the entire Senate.
Yeah. Oh, well, and redrawn the entire House too.
Oh, that's right. I mean, that's right. Both.
It was a profiling courage that I discussed. Actually, it's in both books. And when I talk about civility, and I do talk a lot about civility, civil discourse, and civic engagement when I do lectures around the place, I talk about this particular incident because it's the classic case of saying, okay, we're not going outside the guardrails. These are the guardrails. This is what we've established. It served us well for a long, long time. We're going to stick within the rules. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of people out there after the Trump election that should have called Bill Howell, because, we cannot have people going outside the guardrails and outside the rules, or we'll lose this country.
Well, and, if we come back to baseball, and we should, you can't move the strike zone during the pitch. You have to establish what is and what is not a strike in the game of baseball. You have to establish what is and what is not holding in the game of football. You have to establish what is and what is not offsides in soccer. You have to establish these things so that the rest of society knows how to behave. That's the essence of why we have these rules and these laws in the first place. It's that everyone goes, well, I might not like it, but that's the law. Like getting off a plane yesterday, one of these yutzes comes from like 10, 20 rows back before everyone's off the plane. And people are like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm getting off. And they're like, that's not how it works. There's no law that says you can't, but that's sort of how we govern ourselves. You just can't go rolling up here and block everyone from getting their bags and getting off the plane.
Yeah. I guess you could take it all the way back to all the way back to the founding of the country. I mean, the notion of a civic virtue, and then people had a responsibility outside of the legal system to try to help each other out, and also have sound norms and rules for how we govern ourselves. And there's a real risk we're going to be losing that. And we don't have a lot of the leaders who identify with those views are leaving the scene. And so when you look at a new House of Delegates and say, a lot of these people didn't cut their teeth with folks who'd been around for a while, and they think they know everything there is to know about how you should govern, and maybe they should talk to some folks who have some experience to get their perspective on things.
Well, and I think the Bill Howell example is important, but if they don't respect it and don't understand it, and it's not rewarded and thanked, they'll not see the upside from doing the right thing. They'll do what they can get away with, regardless of party. I mean, this is not a slap at either party. It's a slap at both parties and people in both parties who, when they see the ring, and please, dear Lord, go watch The Lord of Rings, Republicans and Democrats. There is a reason why that story is so powerful. The ring of power is destructive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's destructive.
Yeah. And
I look forward to reading your book. I haven't read it yet. That's on me. I gotta get it. I'll order it Amazon today. It's available on Amazon. Yes.
It's available on Amazon and local bookstores all over the place. And
really,
that means after
good distribution. How's our sales for your book?
They haven't told me yet. It's really interesting, this publishing.
You getting paid?
They don't tell you. They don't tell you for a while. Eventually, you'll get a $2.95 check for royalties. But I didn't write it to make money. So after you read it, you'll have to have me come on, and then I can tell you about how I saw Aaron Judge hit a home run in person this year, which was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay.
Not good. 62, but I think it was 58.
Wow. You saw the major league record be broken by Aaron Judge.
Well, I could claim that too.
Well, but you saw him during the season in which he broke the major league record.
That is exactly right.
I don't count the other three.
Yeah.
They have a different era and a different record. They have the record for the steroid era. God bless.
You talk about the guardrails.
There you go. See, go back to baseball and guardrails. Just do it the right way. Just play the game. Just play the game the right way, and everyone's going to be a lot better off. David Toscano, thanks for joining us. I'd love to have you back on. My apology for not reading your book. It's just haven't gotten to it yet. I'm sure it's a wonderful book. Bellwether, available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and where else?
Local bookstores, lots of places. I know they have them in Richmond, and the New Dominion and bookstore in Charlottesville has it. So
have any political science departments in Virginia picked it up as a textbook yet? Supplemental text?
But Patrick Hope and David Ramadan. Yeah, David Ramadan, they're using it in their classes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Great job. And thanks for staying involved and engaged in politics. Reasoned voices like yourself are a reason why you were a leader of your caucus. There's a difference between being a representative and being a leader, and not every representative is a leader. And that's what the job is. You're there, you're elected to represent other people. But when you're there, people who step up and lead like yourself should be commended for all that you did for the Commonwealth and all we do as we well know, those who serve, we just hand the baton off to the next generation. And we hope we left it better than we found it.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
David, it was great to have you. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. Go Wahoos.